Okay, I replaced my RFU7300 refrigerator in my Airstream Interstate 24X. The refrigerator, it's a 12-volt refrigerator. The refrigerator part was not cooling adequately, but the freezer was working fine. It's a 12-volt refrigerator. It has two different compressors, one for each side. And it's really pretty straightforward to be able to replace it. You really only need two tools: screwdriver and maybe like needle nose pliers or something. First thing you do is go down there to the fuse box and pull the 15 amp fuse that is used for the refrigerator. You need to make sure that you disconnect the power, because if you go in there and when you're disconnecting and hit the positive and negative, it's going to blow the fuse anyway, so you might as well just take out the fuse to start with. It looks like it's going to be pretty straightforward, but we're going to find out how to remove this refrigerator and put it the new one back in. This one, all I had to do was remove 4 screws. One here, one here, oops, here, and then there are 2 down by the freezer compartment, one here and one on the other side. This has 2 compressors in it, one for the freezer and one for the refrigerator. You can see I've taken the control piece off of there and disconnected it from the compressor, and that was to prove evidence that I'm destroying it, so it's not going to be reused. The manufacturer needed that. But the first thing to do is disconnect the power sources. I did pull the fuse out of the fuse box, which there's a 15 amp fuse back there to do that. And then I physically disconnected the power wires, which would be on the top 2 blades on each of the control panels in front of the compressors. And then I was a little not so optimistic that 4 screws was all it's going to take to remove the refrigerator. So I did take the 4 screws out, and I've already started to slide this thing out. So it looks like so far so good, that this is going to be pretty straightforward. So far so good. I just manipulated a little bit, opened up the compartments, lifted it up a little bit to take some pressure off the bottom so I could start sliding it backwards. And then once you get the ability to get your fingers back here, you can just slide this back and forth as you pull it back, and it's not really that heavy. So I have the refrigerator tilted forward against the front countertop. It's not completely out, and I did notice the wiring. So that white wire does not go through the bottom of the refrigerator, so you can see there's some connections they've made, and then they taped the wiring to the back of the refrigerator. So I'm just going to figure out those wires, pull those wires backwards so that I know that they're not connected to the refrigerator anywhere. Okay, this is, even though it's not that heavy, it really is a 2-person job. One would be on the back side of the refrigerator and one on the front. Don't be like me and try to do this by yourself. But what I've done is taking some leveling pads and put it underneath there so that I can pull it out and lay it on the pad and then figure out how to get it out of the van. So from this angle, you can see that the refrigerator barely, it's custom fit to the side of the cabinet on this side and the cabinet structure on this side. So it's going to barely be able to slide out of there, and then I'm sure that the opening to the door is going to be sufficient to get it out there as well. I suspect that this refrigerator has already failed. The original refrigerator in here has already failed, and this is the one I'm pulling out is the second one. The van was purchased originally in September of 21, and the manufacturer date on the refrigerator was April of 2022, which says, oh, this is the second failure. And I looked online, I haven't seen anybody else have failure, so hopefully this will be good. Anyway, I wanted to point out that whether this is original wiring or whether it was with the repair, they gave plenty of distance on the wiring to be able to pull this out. Now, I pulled those wires, remember, from the blades, so those are just kind of hung up on the compressor and stuff on the inside, so those will come right out. And then you can see I'll put those back on the new compressor controller when I put the new one in. I forgot to tell you, I failed geometry. I'm just kidding, but actually just turn the refrigerator so that it's, you know, front back, and then you won't have to remove this. So the new refrigerator has all the wiring already connected. The power is on the top two of the controller. You notice they have these couplers already attached, so I'm gonna have to, you know, just when I get up there, run the wiring through there. And I need to look at the existing wiring to see if there is the same type of connector, which would make it nice, because you see all those splices that have been made. Yeah, I don't see the connector, which would have been really convenient, right? That I could just disconnect and connect. But it looks like maybe whoever did this before, probably an Airstream dealer, used those bullets there to splice the wiring instead of putting a nice connector in there. Okay, so before I put the fridge back in, I decided I wanted to put a little bit more insulation behind it. Now, one thing you have to account for is airflow. I need a channel of air behind the refrigerator. So I'm putting a 1-inch piece of insulation in here, and that should leave at least 2-inch channel for the depth. The refrigerator's 18-inch depth, and that'll leave me 20 inches. So I'll have a 2-inch air channel that goes up behind the refrigerator, and then it will vent out the top. Okay, so as anybody who probably knows how to actually install insulation, they probably noticed the foil was in the wrong direction. So apparently it goes, the foil goes to the outside where the temperature is, the difference in temperature is greater. And the second thing I found when I was putting some weight on here is that it came undone from the wood, and there is no brace of wood on this side. There's the black tanks underneath, and so these two screws to go there and over here somewhere, you can see they had 3 of them, are these small ones that barely go through the piece of wood into the next one. It was pretty amazing how little of that screw was actually in the wood. So I'm going to replace that. Those are 1 5/8 screws, and I'm going to make sure this is much more secure before I put everything back in. Okay, so it's time to put the wiring through here and then install the refrigerator. So I'm going to take this wire bundle and I'm going to put it through the back of the refrigerator and get that in place, and then pull it through the front. And I'm sure that you looked at that video and earlier and saw the white plugs on the front and wishing I had a connector. Well, I guess I do have all the blades that I need to be able to connect directly to the controller in the front, and I know which red and black pair belongs to the refrigerator because they have that secondary piece there, which is the thermostat, or I'm sorry, the LED light for the refrigerator. So I'll just pull those through, connect it, and then bear hug this thing and put it up into the slot. Okay, so I pulled the wires through the back. I disconnected the wiring harness that was on the new refrigerator, and I connected the positive and negative on top, positive on the bottom, right here. Now the wiring harness that came with it on the refrigerator side, that was freezer side. Refrigerator side, notice has these jumpers on them. That's the LED lights inside the refrigerator. So I'm going to take off these two, disconnect these two, and then I will reconnect, the ones that were already on the other refrigerator. Oops, sorry, right there with the jumper. Okay, so I was attempting to get the LEDs hooked up, and you see the connectors on the factory wire on the left. The one that was on there is on the right. This one's the one that was already on there. This is the one that came with the new one. They make actually a slight difference when they connect to this. One doesn't fit, and so what I did instead was disconnected the new wire, at this point right here. It was connected to this harness, and then just put the new one on the end, which gives me this to connect to the LED light inside. Okay, it was a little bit of a tight fit, which is probably a really good thing. It'd be a lot easier to do this with two people, although there's not a whole lot of room to wiggle around, but it would be nice to have somebody on that side and this side when you put it in. But I got it back in there, and I'll just use the screws. What I did again was use these leveling pads, put the refrigerator on it at just above the height of the bottom here, and then I was able to manipulate it and kind of go back and forth and slide it up and down to get it in there. Again, a tight fit, but looks good. So I'll just put the 4 screws back in, put the caps on the screws, take off the nice peeling there to have that nice new aluminum look. Put the fuse back in the fuse box down here and see how it works.